Tel Aviv is burning. Not a headline, not a movie scene, but reality at 3:00 a.m. as an Iranian missile tore through the night sky, collapsing 3 high-rise towers and turning Israel's economic capital into a firestorm of chaos within minutes. Over 270 civilians injured, hospitals overwhelmed, and Israel's Iron Dome, long thought impenetrable, breached in seconds. But this was only the beginning. In the shadows, one terrifying truth emerged. Iran's missile capabilities are intact, and 400 kilograms of enriched uranium have gone missing. From Washington to Moscow, from the Strait of Hormuz to New York, world powers silently shifted into battle positions. One wrong move now could ignite an irreversible chain reaction. Has nuclear material already changed hands? And is a third player, invisible, unpredictable, waiting to strike? In this report, we reveal what no one else dares to show you: the untold story behind the Iran-Israel war, and why this might be the spark that triggers World War III. It happened in seconds. A blinding flash tore through the night sky over Tel Aviv. Then came the roar. A fireball the size of a city block engulfed 2 towers in the central district. Glass shattered like gunfire. Alarms shrieked. Streets turned to rubble. Hundreds ran. Many didn't make it. Security cameras captured the moment. An Iranian missile, undetected, unchallenged, slamming into the skyline like the wrath of a forgotten god. And in that instant, the illusion of safety vanished. The Iron Dome, once hailed as impenetrable, failed. Israel's defense was pierced. Tehran had sent a message, and it wasn't subtle. This was not a skirmish. This was a declaration. The airwaves buzzed with disbelief. The media stuttered. Military channels were flooded with the same phrase over and over again. Direct hit. Tel Aviv is burning. But here's the real terror. What if this was just the opening act? What if the next wave comes with nuclear payloads? What if New York or Riyadh is next? Tonight, the question isn't whether the war has started. It's whether we can survive what comes next. Because this may be the moment that marks the beginning of World War III. And we, all of us, are standing at the edge of the abyss. June 22nd, 03:14 a.m. Air raid sirens blared across central Israel, but far too late. In under 3 minutes, 27 medium-range ballistic missiles, most believed to be Zulfiqar and Sejil variants, had already been launched from deep within Iran. Their targets were deliberate: Tel Aviv's financial district, Haifa's naval base, and civilian zones near Be'er Yaakov. It was not a warning, it was an ambush. Just the night before, Israeli F-35I jets had returned from Operation Midnight Hammer, a U.S.-Israel joint operation that crippled Iran's nuclear centrifuges at Fordow, Isfahan, and Natanz. The mission was hailed as a success. Crowds in Jerusalem had cheered. But the celebration was premature. Iran's retaliation came swift, strategic, and brutal. In Tel Aviv, 3 residential towers crumbled. One, the Azrieli Circular Tower, was struck near its midsection. Floors 28 to 32 collapsed entirely, igniting a vertical inferno. Witnesses say the heat was like standing behind a jet engine. In Haifa, 2 missiles penetrated the northern naval facility, damaging a Patriot missile battery and killing 9 personnel, according to IDF radio. Civilian neighborhoods nearby suffered collateral damage, including a kindergarten incinerated in the blast radius. In Be'er Yaakov, a strike on a power substation left tens of thousands in total blackout, including critical care hospitals. Initial reports from Magen David Adom, Israel's Red Cross, listed at least 86 injured, 14 in critical condition, though numbers were expected to rise. Drones flying above the smoke-filled skies showed scenes more akin to Gaza during wartime than to Israel's modern commercial capital. From an underground bunker in Jerusalem, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the nation via encrypted military channels. Iran will pay the full price for this terror. Every missile they launch, every civilian they harm, brings them one step closer to destruction. Global markets plunged within the hour. Crude oil jumped 8%. The UN Security Council convened an emergency session. But it was already clear. This was no longer a shadow war. This was direct, unfiltered war between states. And the next 48 hours would determine whether the world could contain it or be consumed by it. As the dust settled over Tel Aviv's scorched skyline, chaos engulfed the nation. Traffic lights failed. Phone signals dropped. Emergency sirens rang into the dawn, not just warning of incoming missiles, but of a society thrown into wartime paralysis. Hospitals in Tel Aviv and Beersheba overflowed. The Ichalov Medical Center, one of Israel's largest trauma hospitals, was forced to triage patients in makeshift tents outside its emergency wing. Volunteers handed out bottled water under flickering street lamps as helicopters buzzed above, evacuating the critically injured. Footage flooded in from civilians, plumes of smoke like volcanic ash rising from shattered apartment blocks. Windows blasted inward by pressure waves. Children crying in underground shelters lit only by phone flashlights. The Israel Defense Forces, IDF, confirmed the worst. "This is Iran's most coordinated and devastating missile salvo in history," declared Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi, IDF Chief of Staff. "We are at full mobilization." But Israel wasn't alone in its suffering. American interests were struck too. At Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, home to more than 10,000 U.S. troops and CENTCOM operations, Iran launched 4 Shahed 238 cruise missiles, 2 of which landed inside the perimeter, causing structural damage to a hangar housing MQ-9 Reaper drones. Washington later confirmed 3 injured servicemen, none life-threatening. In response, U.S. Patriot batteries across the region went active, launching interceptors over Bahrain, the UAE, and even parts of northern Saudi Arabia. "This is no longer about defending Israel," said Major General John W. O'Brien, a former U.S. counterterrorism commander. "Iran has drawn blood from the United States. That changes everything." Simultaneously, Iranian state media, IRIB, boasted of unprecedented accuracy and issued fresh threats. "If the U.S. continues supporting Zionist aggression, we will cripple their presence in the Persian Gulf." Meanwhile, in New York, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres issued an urgent plea. The region stands on the precipice of an uncontrollable inferno. The world must act, or suffer the consequences. But diplomacy struggled to keep pace. Russia and China vetoed a joint resolution condemning Iran, citing provocations committed by Western powers. At the same time, Iranian Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdollahian claimed the strikes were measured, lawful retaliation, adding, "We do not seek escalation, but we will not tolerate foreign attacks on our sovereignty." Back in Israel, the Iron Dome and David's sling systems were stretched thin with at least 23 missiles breaching defenses. One senior IDF source admitted, "We're burning through hundreds of millions of shekels per day on interceptors, but more than money, we're burning time." Non-proliferation experts warned that the core issue, Iran's nuclear breakout timeline, remained unsolved. "Even with direct hits on Fordow and Natanz, we estimate only a 3 to 5 month delay," explained Dr. Laura Spector of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. "That assumes no clandestine sites, which is unlikely." As the international community scrambled to respond, a grim realization set in. This was not just a tit-for-tat exchange. This was a pressure cooker with no safety valve, and it was only getting hotter. June 21st, 02:45 a.m., Operation Midnight. Hammer commenced. In a move that shocked both allies and adversaries, the United States openly crossed the line from supporter to direct combatant. Under the codename Midnight Hammer, a combined air-sea operation targeted Iran's nuclear infrastructure, specifically Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan, using weapons of unprecedented scale. 7 B-2 Spirit stealth bombers took off from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, refueled mid-air over the Mediterranean, and penetrated deep into Iranian airspace. under radar silence. At precisely 3:12 a.m. Tehran time, they released 14 GBU-57A BM-OPs, massive ordnance penetrators, each weighing 30,000 pounds, designed to burrow through 200 feet of concrete and rock. Simultaneously, a Virginia-class nuclear submarine in the Arabian Sea launched 32 Tomahawk Block 5 cruise missiles, striking peripheral technical facilities and radar systems near Natanz and Esfahan. It marked the first recorded wartime use of this next-generation variant. The shock wasn't just in the firepower, it was in the clarity of intent. Until now, U.S. military doctrine focused on containment and deterrence. But this marked a paradigm shift. America had not just responded, it had preemptively neutralized assets vital to Iran's strategic ambitions. "Our message is unambiguous," stated U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin in a terse Pentagon briefing. "Weapons of mass destruction will never be tolerated, not here, not anywhere." The strategic rationale, as later leaked in a DIA internal report, listed 3 core objectives. Neutralize Fordow, Iran's most heavily fortified uranium enrichment site, buried beneath a mountain near Qom. Demonstrate full-spectrum deterrence, showing that the U.S. is willing to act decisively, not just rhetorically. Reaffirm alliance with Israel, under pressure from Congress and AIPAC, which had accused the Biden administration of abandoning the Jewish state during existential threat. But this bold shift came at a cost. While Fordow and Natanz suffered major damage, satellite analysis from CS and Maxar Technologies showed that key centrifuge halls were still structurally intact. Iranian state TV broadcast footage of emergency crews in hazmat suits attempting to secure radiation containment. The Zionist-American aggression has crossed a line that cannot be redrawn, declared Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Iran's supreme leader, in a nationally televised speech. Their skies will no longer be safe. The reaction was global. Russia immediately condemned the strikes, calling them flagrant violations of sovereign airspace and international law. China called for restraint, but warned that Asian stability is under serious threat. France and Germany remained silent, caught between NATO loyalties and fear of an oil crisis. And that fear wasn't unfounded. Brent crude surged to $134 a barrel, the highest in a decade. Energy ministers across Europe met in emergency session. Lloyd's of London raised war insurance premiums in the Strait of Hormuz by 300%. Diplomacy faltered. Trust crumbled. Strategic ambiguity, the shield that once prevented open war, had vanished. As one analyst on Al Jazeera put it, "The age of quiet deterrence is over. The age of visible escalation has begun." From that moment forward, there was no longer any doubt. This was no longer about messages or red lines. This was about survival. The line had been crossed, and now the flood came. Overnight, what was once a regional conflict between Israel and Iran evolved into a multinational firestorm. With diplomacy gasping its last breath, the battlefield expanded across 3 fronts: air, sea, and cyberspace. Iran retaliated ferociously. In the early hours of June 23rd, Tehran launched over 40 ballistic and cruise missiles targeting strategic Israeli infrastructure, the Dimona nuclear facility, the Haifa Naval Command, and IDF Southern Command near Beersheva. Most were intercepted, but not all. A missile penetrated the Iron Dome near Beersheba and struck Soroka Medical Center, where emergency wards were already packed with victims from previous nights. At least 50 people were injured, including paramedics and doctors. The Red Cross described the scene as a war hospital in real time. Meanwhile, U.S. submarines lurking in the Arabian Sea intercepted and fired on 2 Iranian Qasem-class supply vessels, reportedly transporting drones and fuel to Houthi militias in Yemen. The vessels were sunk. Hours later, Iran struck back, with precision. Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, a linchpin of U.S. Central Command, came under fire from Iranian Fateh 110 missiles, marking Iran's first direct strike on a U.S. military base in this war. The Pentagon confirmed 7 servicemen wounded, 2 seriously. Air traffic from the base was rerouted to Jordan and Kuwait. As news of the strike broke, global shockwaves intensified. Markets collapsed. Oil soared to $147 a barrel. The Tel Aviv Stock Exchange suspended trading for the first time since the Second Intifada. The Swiss parliament declared a national emergency drill. In India, fuel rationing was imposed in 3 states. Inside Israel, the civilian toll deepened. 271 civilians injured in a single night, with dozens trapped in collapsed buildings in Ramat Gan and Ashkelon. Schools converted to shelters. Military reservists, including 80,000 new conscripts, were deployed along the northern Lebanese border, anticipating Hezbollah's involvement. Iranian state media, Press TV, claimed it had shot down 5 Israeli F-35I Ideir fighter jets using its upgraded Bavar 373 system. While no photographic proof was released, the Ideir did not deny the report, sparking intense speculation in defense circles. "There is no safe zone in Iran's sky now," declared Prime Minister Netanyahu, standing amid sandbags at an undisclosed IDF command post. "We will strike every shadow and every surface where this terror emerges." Across the Atlantic, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth hailed Operation Midnight Hammer as a bold and brilliant reminder that America does not blink. Meanwhile, General Dan Kane, commander of U.S. Air Forces in the Middle East, praised the mission as overwhelming in execution, flawless in precision. But that narrative was soon undercut by a leaked internal report from the Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA. The classified briefing obtained by the Washington Post painted a bleaker picture. Fordo was partially damaged, not neutralized. Iran's ability to enrich uranium remained largely intact. Estimated delay to Iran's nuclear breakout: only 4 to 6 months. Even more alarming, the report warned of Iran's probable use of asymmetric tactics, including targeting U.S. satellites via electronic jamming, expanding cyber warfare on civilian energy grids in Europe, greenlighting proxy strikes via Hezbollah and Houthi cells across Africa and Southeast Asia. Still, for many Israelis on the ground, none of that mattered. What they saw was this: burning buildings, hospitals collapsing, funerals doubling each hour. For them, the war was no longer strategic. It had become personal. And yet, the world still hadn't seen the worst. As headlines celebrated Operation Midnight Hammer and front pages declared Fordow flattened, a more disturbing narrative began to take shape, quietly and from within. The leak of a Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA, internal report to the Washington Post had rattled Washington's polished image of military dominance. According to the leak, Iran's critical nuclear infrastructure had survived more than expected, and worse, a large quantity of enriched uranium had disappeared. White House Communications Director Caroline Leavitt was quick to dismiss the document as fake news, a desperate hit job by a low-level loser trying to undermine a mission that saved the world from a nuclear madman. But the tone, defensive, even panicked, only raised more questions. More revelations emerged, this time from Major General Robert Spaulding, a former B-2 Spirit pilot and Air Force strategist. In an interview with Breaking Defense, Spaulding detailed the deception campaign behind Midnight Hammer. Decoy bombers were flown from Diego Garcia to simulate a false approach from the south. U.S. cyber units flooded Iranian radar systems with phantom signals, confusing air defense operators. Iranian early warning networks were misled into thinking the real targets were in Iraq and Syria, not deep in central Iran. This wasn't just a bombing run, it was theater, Spaulding said. We told a lie so convincing that even their most advanced SAM operators fell for it. But the success of that ruse only sharpened the sting of the leak. Because the same DIA report made clear, Iran's rapid launch missile capability remained intact, and an estimated 400 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium, enough to manufacture up to 10 nuclear warheads, was unaccounted for. Not destroyed, not seized, gone. According to Dr. Edmund Sacher, nuclear proliferation expert at CES, this isn't just a lapse in targeting. This is a nightmare scenario. Iran now has the material and perhaps the motive to accelerate nuclear breakout, with no verification mechanisms in place. The International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, which had inspectors in Iran under the 2015 nuclear deal, issued a rare midnight statement. We no longer have visibility into Iran's enrichment activities. All inspection protocols have ceased. Worse yet, Iran formally announced its withdrawal from the Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT, during a televised address by Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdollahian, citing acts of illegal aggression by hostile states. This legally removed all barriers to full-scale weaponization and signaled the world would now operate in complete darkness. And then came the whisper that turned into a storm. Anonymous intelligence chatter, picked up across Mossad, MI6, and even French DGSE, suggested that the missing uranium might not be in Iran at all. Multiple satellite intercepts showed an unscheduled cargo jet departing from Esfahan Air Base, heading west toward Lebanon, briefly disappearing from radar over the Syrian desert. Hezbollah, North Korea, or a rogue third state? No one knew. No one claimed it. No one could prove it. But for the first time in 2 decades, U.S. DEFCON levels quietly moved from 4 to DEFCON 3, increased readiness for conflict. And somewhere in the Pentagon's war room, a single question echoed off the cold steel walls. What if the next bomb doesn't come from a silo, but from a suitcase? The twist wasn't just that Iran had survived. It was that Iran might now hold the cards that were once only feared in theory, and the world had no idea who they would play them with, or when. Tel Aviv is no longer the city it was. By nightfall, the capital lies cloaked in darkness, not just from rolling blackouts, but from fear. Military checkpoints divide neighborhoods. Schools have become makeshift shelters. Families sleep in stairwells with radios pressed to their ears. The silence is not peace, it is anticipation. Outside, rescue workers continue to pull bodies from crumbled towers. At Ichilov Hospital, the pediatric ward has been relocated to an underground parking garage. A mother cradles her son's blood-soaked backpack, whispering lullabies to an empty cot. She asks no one in particular, will he ever go back to school? Across the ocean, in New York, diplomats pace the halls of the United Nations headquarters, exhausted and divided. France and Germany push for humanitarian ceasefire corridors. Russia accuses NATO of escalation. China remains silent. In Washington, a visibly aged President Donald Trump announces a temporary ceasefire, brokered via Oman and Switzerland, but warns, we've shown restraint. Don't mistake that for weakness. Peace through strength, for now. Yet, no one exhaled. Because the question still hung in the air, heavy as radioactive dust. What if Iran doesn't retreat, but reloads? What if its missing uranium is en route to Damascus or beyond? What if this ceasefire is not the end, but the intermission before Act 2? At sea, U.S. carrier groups remain in DEFCON 3, their radar dishes spinning beneath moonlight. At the Strait of Hormuz, Iranian speedboats taunt oil tankers like wolves circling prey. Meanwhile, Israel's military remains on full alert, bracing for what it calls a second silent wave. The emotional toll is no longer theoretical. A 9-year-old boy, Yonatan, now orphaned, asked a journalist through tears, "If we're the good guys, why did the sky catch fire?" No one could answer him. And perhaps that's the most terrifying part. Because this war is no longer about borders or ideology. It is about momentum. About who blinks first in a room full of warheads. About how close humanity is willing to drift toward the edge before it slips. In the ruins of a Tel Aviv apartment, a survivor scrawled a message on her broken wall before evacuation. This isn't the end of the world. but I think I saw it from here. If this story left you questioning what comes next, leave your thoughts below. And follow this channel to uncover the truths hidden behind silence and smoke. Because sometimes the most dangerous war is the one we think we've survived.